I saw you, Kevin. Kevin, you're both muted. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Good.
Now I'm doing work for the Mendon Taxation Aid Committee. See this nice handiwork? Half a page article in the local paper.
Oh, that's beautiful. Tax relief for Mendon seniors.
Right, written by our committee chair, ghost written by me. Half a page article, and now I'm just putting it up on Facebook.
Oh, that's excellent, Kevin. Oh. I'm not going to turn the recording off because I don't want to forget to turn it back on. You send a lot of documents.
If they want them, I wanted the people to see the trends. All right, why won't this come back to you? Hold on a minute.
Sure, you wrap that up.
Ah.
Hi, stranger.
Okay, that's there. Get rid of that. Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
There we are.
The snow melted.
Hi, Susie.
Hiya.
Hey, Susie, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Hi, Jim.
How long and how wide is your gazebo? You put up
It's
last year.
what
It's
is
a
it?
12-foot
12
octagonal.
Yeah, 12-foot octagonal. Yeah.
So is it 12 foot long by X feet wide?
Well, no, it's 12. The diameter is 12.
All the way around.
Perfectly all around?
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. You just saved me a visit to measure.
Yeah. I thought that was in the building permit stuff you get.
Yeah, it was, but it's new growth time. I was out today driving all over, and I said, I don't want to go on Susie's property. I'll see her tonight and ask her.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm going to write myself a note. So,
Hi, Bob.
Hello.
Hello.
You could always learn sign language.
Hey, Jim. I don't know if Jim heard me when I said hi before.
Oh, yes, I heard you.
Okay.
But I was muted at the time.
Right. That's why I was looking to see if you were unmuted.
how much of my stuff I sent you did you share? All of it?
Yep.
Oh, goody. Just
So-
want to show housing price trends.
So you guys, I just sent out a revenue and expenditure update, and at 6:30 or earlier than that, around 6, I think I forwarded, I don't know when.
I just
But Kevin's stuff was sent out as well, a 3A report on house sales.
Yeah, LA3 is
part of the recap, right?
the LA3 is the calendar year 20 house sales. That's what the fiscal 22 valuation is based on.
Calendar 20.
Then I sent a 15-year look at single family and all residential values in the town. And I sent the projected valuation increase to date. And I can't remember what the fourth one was, but it was, the Census Bureau list of average housing prices in the Northeast for the last 30 something years, 40 years.
Great.
I went to the DLS dashboard and went to print it out, it is unreadable. It's like, come on. You say the dashboard numbers.
The DLS dashboard is wonderful online. It's useless
Useless.
anywhere else.
Really.
And not only that, the color they chose,
Yeah, forget that.
if you print it out in color, that blue is the one color that a Xerox machine cannot reproduce.
Yeah.
If you ever try to Xerox graph paper, you know it comes out blank because that color blue is unreadable and by photocopiers. And in the DLS website, everything comes out in that blue.
So we got that worked out.
Must be
By
an
the
old
way-
accounting trick.
By the way, nobody at the DOR likes the website, but the state mandated it. I was on a Zoom call with them last week, and you should have heard them ripping that because it used to be a lot more readable. And then about 5 years ago, they decided to make every page look the same, whether it fit or not.
Okay.
It's not helpful.
MW, where is he? Here we go.
Is it still raining in Shutesbury?
No,
Sunny.
Oh, it was when I left, so
Okay.
at 3?
I'm just down in pollen land, though. I walked out of my car at home and injected a giant dose of oak pollen. Took me since 5 o'clock to get to breathe again.
Ugh.
My car is completely yellow. It's been in the front yard for 3 hours? Oh. And of course, one of the kids left the window open, so it all blew in the house.
Beautiful.
You have kids for.
Looks like we have a full committee here. Can we go ahead and open the meeting?
Yep.
Okay, and we have Kevin. Do we want to start with Kevin? Okay, we have a really heavy agenda tonight. There's 3 topics that are all going to be significant time consumers. We need to try to push to keep on track here, I think, in order to make it a fairly not too late night, I think.
Yep.
Sounds
So
good.
with all that, if Kevin could kick us off.
Okay, first of all, I through Becky, you've got 4 documents. I'm overloading you with info that you don't need at this meeting, but you might want to look at later on. One is from the US Census Bureau, and it's the average price of a home in the Northeast since like 1963. And I just thought you'd find that interesting to see how housing prices keep climbing. Not necessary for the call, but is necessary for assessing. Another document I gave you is a spreadsheet that's 15 fiscal years worth of true numbers on the assessed value for single family homes and then all residential parcels and how they changed over the last 15 years. The 2 that really pertain to fiscal 22 are, one of them says LA3 report. And all I want you to do is, if you have that, there's a column way on the right that says A/S. That stands for assessed price divided by sale price. There are 34 sales for calendar 20 that are going to become the basis of what the values are for fiscal 22. And of those 34, 25 are below 1.0 and 9 are above 1.0. What I'm doing over the next couple of months is I got to figure out how to get them all to 1.0. And that's how the valuations will be going for fiscal 22. The ones that are below 1 are the ones that are concerning because they mean that the sale price is above our assessments. And when you see things at 0.67, 0.5 something, they're way off. And I'll tell you, that's continuing right now in calendar 21. We just had a house that we have assessed at $600,000, was listed at $880 and sold for $960 a week ago. This housing market is blowing up everybody's assessment.
Yeah, Kevin,
Yeah,
can you again define that A over S? You said that's the
A-
assessment value per.
A over S is our assessment price divided by the sale price, gives you a
Okay.
ratio.
Okay, so
The
anything that's,
department-
anything that's under one, the sales price was above,
Well-
above,
The sale price was above the assessment,
yeah,
okay? That's below one. Above one, the price was below the assessment.
yeah.
Through a ratio study, the DOR mandates, we got to harmonize that. So that list, broken up into classes and neighborhoods, blends out to between 0.9 and 1.1. So they give you a range to go to, but I got a lot of them in the 60s and 70s and 50s that got to come up. And again, what I have to do is look at what neighborhood they are, what style of house they are, how old they are, and start segmenting them out to make sure we're only adjusting the ones that need adjusting, the classes of property. Now, the reason I gave you all that other background info is so you guys can see assessments go up and down year to year. In that 15-year study, they only went down a couple of years. They stayed at zero twice. But I will tell you, in fiscal 22, valuations have to go up because the sales prices in calendar 20 are way outstripping where we are. And, you know, I can minimize it as much as possible, but, you know, they're going to have to go up. Where and how much, I don't know. They went up 1.2% last year. My guess is somewhere between 1.5 and 2% on top of where they are. The only other valuation increases I know of, I gave Becky on a sheet. 3 of them are utility companies. These are guaranteed, by the way. Projected added value of 1.6 million, which equals at this year's tax rate $35,905.65. Those are givens. The utilities will all go up by 20%. In fact, they may go higher, but they're going up by a minimum because the Department of Revenue mandated a new valuation system this year. And the average for those who piloted it last year was 30%. I'm going conservative at 20. And that's 1.139,860, a new value right there at 20. You're getting 317,210 value from Wheelock, both the pilots and the land.
Kevin,
Yes,
are you referring to one of these documents you sent us?
yes, it's the one that says projected valuation increases in FY22.
Narrative looking.
It's a spreadsheet.
Kevin, maybe it'd be help. Jim, did you find it? Do you want to put it up
Yep.
online?
I found it. I can do that if that's of,
Would everybody like that?
Yeah, there's 4 categories on it, but I want to take it through them because this is guaranteed increase right now.
Okay, Kevin, give him a second to put it up
Yep.
online so people can follow you because I
Okay,
think you might want to slow down, just half speak.
you know me, I just go.
Kevin, is that 35,000 that the utility companies are paying, that's for poll, that, you know, it has to do with poll fees, right?
It is the sum value of everything they have in town. And by giving us a new way of valuing, the courts and the DOR have ordered this. They used to do something called net book value. And effective fiscal 22, net book value is no longer the basis for measuring utilities. It's now 50% net book value and 50% replacement cost new. So every year they give us a list of their assets and they've been telling us what they're worth. This year, we are all hiring consultants to do the new blended method. And the average for electric has been 30 across the state. And I'm saying 20 to be safe until I get those numbers in. So
That's an average increase of 20%.
for all electric utilities, there is a big problem though. Eversource is suing every town that does the new methodology. So they're going to sue over that increase 67,940. They're going to sue to abate that. We're going to deny it, and they're going to take us to the appellate tax board. They've taken all 351 cities and towns. Anybody that's done this, they've taken to court.
How successful have they been?
The appellate tax board has been in COVID limbo. I will tell you that the Attorney General of the state, as of 2 weeks ago, is meeting with the president of Eversource to tell them that she is going to file suit for false, what's determined legal? Anybody a lawyer? Filing false claims in court, because the courts have decided this already. They don't have a right to appeal it. So anyway, if I'm waiting until Jim gets that up.
Yeah, Becky, you need to let me share.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry, Jim.
And Kevin, for the purpose of minutes, I just want to make sure I get this correct. This new system that the DOR has introduced requires us to assess utilities at 50%
Good.
net book value and 50% replacement costs. Is that what you said?
Yes,
Okay.
they're called Chapter 504 valuations. I'm sorry, Class 504. Okay, so let me walk through them. So I'm giving each of them a 20% increase in value until I get the final numbers, which will be in June. And right now, that's 1,139,860 in new value. It is coming, so it may be higher, but it's definitely going to be at the 20% mark. So again, that's called a Category 504 utility valuation. And it is a DOR mandate. And just so you know, along with every other city in town, I am paying a consultant out of my reval account $2,000 per count, which is extraordinarily cheap because the highest guy is 12 per utility, to do this, so it will be court proof, because this guy testifies in court. I've also am teaching myself how to do it so that once he shows me how he did it, next year I can do it and save the money. It's so complicated, no assessors have been able to figure out how to do this. Just so you know, but okay. In Wheelock, between the solar pilot, the solar farm pilot, and the storage battery pilot, we're getting 315,466 in new value. And in the land, we're getting 1,744 for a total of 317,210 new value from the Wheelock site. That's the pilot and the land, or the two pilots in the land. That's the second category. The third category is the Department of Revenue has this little group called the Mass Farmland Valuation Advisory Committee. And for the first time in 3 years, they raised the value that we can charge per acre of forest and agricultural land. So forestry is going up 21 an acre, and agriculture is going up 19 an acre. And that results in new value, in an additional 125,073 on our 61 and 61A properties. That again is guaranteed. I just broke out Coles in case people ask. It's really 129 something for all the forest, but people always want to know what Coles contributes. So they're going up 70 and the rest of the owners are going up 50. Wood stoves. In the course of looking at new growth and building permits, I discovered $5,900 worth of value of wood stoves that for some reason had never entered our system. They're now in. So that's in, and that adds up to 1,588,043 in new value. All those categories, which at this year's tax rate is $35,905.65. They will all be at next year's tax rate, obviously, but that gives you an idea of what 1.5 million translates into in new value. What's not on here, if you go down a little bit more, Jim, on the page, is I did, which there's other value increases to come. I did a second home audit at the end of last year to make sure that every second home in town that's valued at more than $75,000, which is our exemption amount the town voted on years ago, is paying personal property tax. I believe we got 20 more houses. It's not a lot of money in tax revenue. At this year's rate, it comes out to like $3,000, but it's stuff that we weren't getting. And then the interim value adjustment I just referred to, I hope to have those numbers in early June. We're just starting the ratio cranking now, and that's about a month's worth of work for me to go literally house by house, style, age, neighborhood, playing around them to see how to get them harmonized. So right now, I can guarantee you 1,588,043 in added value that's coming no matter what we do. And then probably to that 35,000, maybe another 3,000 in personal property taxes. So you're at 38 there. The value adjustments, I said, somewhere between 1.5 to 2% over this year's valuations. It could be higher, but it's not going to affect every class of property. Last year, it affected all the smaller homes because that was the bulk of sales in calendar 18 and 19. In 20, we started getting into what I would call the average everyday homes, the colonials, every style. And that's what I got to look at. I got to segment them all out and find out what gets affected where. And most of these from about March onward were bidding wars. Every house that's sold right now in Shutesbury is bid up over the asking price. And I think one of the pages I gave you, the page with the 15-year summary, just to give you statistics, across all of Massachusetts, the price of a single family home went up by a median 11.5% in 20 over 19, compared to 3.9 in 19 over 18. Franklin County, the median price rose by 6.9% from 20 over 19. Depending on what county you're in, it's a lot higher. If you're in Berkshire County right now, that's about 15%. If you're in Suffolk County, it's about 30%. If you're in parts of Worcester County, it's about 12 or 13%. So we're dealing with prices that rose between, an average 6.9 across the county. It's going to, I have no choice but to increase assessments.
So Kevin, is this chart of the 15 years just Shutesbury properties?
That's just Shutesbury.
Okay.
That is from fiscal 27 to 21. That's the actual number of single family homes, the total assessed value and the difference year to year. And then the next one and their average value. And then the next one after that is all residential parcels. So last year, all residential parcels in town, or this year, were valued at $213,174,059. Right now, running it off the machine without any increases, we're at 200 because I lost 3 houses this year. We have 3 teardowns this year, so that's why that dropped. They're already off the books. There's 2 on Lake Drive and 1 on, actually 4, 1 on Wyola, and there's 1 on Shore. So that's why that preliminary number dropped. But my guess is,
Kevin, they were worth $13 million?
no. There's some other problems in there.
Okay.
That does not include all the numbers of housing right now. The report I run does not include everything yet. It also removed what I call the non-arm's length houses. A sale, I was running just at what counts in a sale, and just so you guys all know, an arm's length sale means 2 people that don't know each other, aren't related to each other, aren't family members, and a willing buyer pays a willing seller an amount the seller agrees to. That's called arm's length. And those numbers on the total only include the arm's length. We have a lot of in-family ones where the value is still there, but the house may have sold for $1. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to, maybe this, I know your job is you have legal requirements that you must follow to assess values to market value, but I just want to make a point, just general point, just using myself as an example. I built my house in 1978. I've been living here. I had no intention to sell my house until I was taken out of here by the authorities or something. But if someone buys a house down the street from me for some extraordinary sum that's way out of the assessed value, I found it really unfair that my property value should increase. Since I don't have my house on the market, I'm not in the market. I don't intend to be in the market. And I think that's true for a lot of people in this town. So what are your views about that equity issue?
Well, first of all, it's not just Shutesbury, that's state law. And I'll tell you, the house that I'm sitting in right now in Mendon, Massachusetts, I bought a very badly damaged foreclosure for $149,000 and put about 150 into it. So let's say it's worth 300. According to the assessor in my town, and by the way, I'm chairman of the board of assessors in my town. According to my assessor in my town, this house is worth $500,000.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Okay, well, but Bob, let me explain something. First of all, assessments are always 18 months to 2 years after sales credits. When prices rise, it takes the assessments a couple of years to catch up. During the big recession, it took them a couple of years to go down afterwards, and it took them a couple of years to recover. You don't rise to the price that home rose. But if all colonials, I'm just going to use colonials as an example. If of the 34 sales, 20 were colonials, and they went up an average of 10% above assessment, colonials are going to get adjusted. Is it fair to you? No. I didn't make the law. Actually, the people of Massachusetts voted that law in 1980 called Prop 2.5. That was a clause of it. Susie.
I'm afraid that with the agenda we have tonight, this is a philosophical discussion that's not going to change by what Kevin's doing. And so sort of for the record, Bob said what he said, and I think we need to move on.
Fine with me.
Kevin, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So looking at the schedule that's on the screen, are you telling me that there's 36,000 in new growth from these categories that you've highlighted that add up to 1.6? Plus
These
the-
do not, okay. With the exception of the utility values, none of them count as new growth.
But it is new revenue.
The values are going up, but with the exception of the 3 utilities, whatever increases over last year due to equipment is new growth. And that's a whole separate calculation. You can't call these new growth. I know it sounds stupid. New growth specifically refers to something that physically wasn't there a year ago.
Right, something that wasn't taxed a year ago. I understand that distinction.
Right.
But this is revenue
Yes.
that we didn't have last year.
Correct.
So so I'm really leading towards how do we build this into our revenue formula when we're putting together our budget, which I think is more a question to Becky.
Well, I could hazard a guess too.
All right.
Well, whoever, yeah, I don't.
Well, right now, at this year's tax rate, you're getting $35,906 more revenue that we know of. I don't have the new growth number yet. I did spend most of today looking, and thankfully about three quarters of it is done, including one new house. It's going to be a lot less, as I told you earlier, than last year. So maybe I won't even project it till I add it all up.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a number. I definitely don't want a number, but I just want to make sure that
I would look at all of the house sales for single family. If you want to be safe, 1.2% growth to that 187, 324, 770 of this current year.
I'm sorry, so what I was directed to do by DOR was to add the 1.588 million to our values on the revenue side.
Well, that's what they told you, to go with that.
Becky, how does that fit into the revenue that's available to us for balancing the budget? You're
Well,
talking about the
that-
value side for the tax calculation, but what about the actual revenue?
It does, because our revenue side, okay, so Kevin is still gonna calculate new growth. Whether or not we can use it is the question mark. It will depend on whether the total assessed value brings the tax rate down low enough to actually include the new growth into the calculation. Because as you know, we're already, we're continuing to subtract out excess levy capacity because we're about 400,000, if we're around 400,000 of more
Yep.
revenue,
Then the levy ceiling,
levy,
yes.
and we can act, because it'll be $27 per thousand if we use it all. We can't
It-
use that.
But it's real revenue that we're going to collect. So on that total revenue line, these numbers have to be in there.
No, because we can't collect it.
What do you mean you
Bottom
can't
line,
collect
we
it? Of
do
course
not
we can.
accept new
Well,
growth
so
over $25 per thousand.
what you're saying is we can't collect the total number that I described, which means all those of us who have been paying taxes and our properties are the same are actually going to get a lower tax bill to the extent that we can't report this. We're
Right.
all going to get a credit, is what you're saying.
Kevin's saying no, but that's on, he's thinking more about the total value side, I'm pretty sure.
May I say something here? I think that if the total value goes up and the spending stays the same, the tax rate goes down, keeping us under 25, right? I mean,
Well,
that's
we're-
another variable is the tax rate, right, George?
Yeah, yeah, what your statement, yeah, if values go up, tax rate goes down, but I'm just talking about the revenue that we have available to balance the budget. This is new revenue, right? This is revenue we weren't collecting on all these things that are listed.
Correct.
So that's coming into the town. That's going to be billed by the tax collector. But Becky's point is because we're at the ceiling, we can't add that to the total amount that we levy, which means those of us who have been paying taxes are going to get a bit of a credit because this new money is going to offset some of what we've been paying
Yeah.
at the ceiling.
Yeah, we'll pay less.
So, all right, I just want to understand that. I just want to, because I was thinking in this conversation that our revenue just went up and our surplus just went up, but that's not the case. That's,
No,
Becky
because
has
what
made it
the
very
goal
clear, and Kevin.
is-
Right.
So that's how it works. Okay, I just want to understand that. Kevin, one last question about the new growth number. When you calculate the new growth, those 4 properties that are being dismantled, do you take the taxes that they've been paying and subtract that out of the new growth?
Well,
does
first
that-
of all, the houses were all there on January 1st of this year, so they get taxed
In fiscal 22?
in fiscal 22. Fiscal
Okay.
22 is the state of the property on January 1st of 21 based on calendar 20 sales.
Mhm.
Okay,
So when we're putting together the 23 budget,
I will have to delete since they didn't get permits or sign offs from the building inspector, the date that they are torn down is the date I viewed them as torn down. Unless they can show me a document dated a month earlier, what we do in fiscal 23 is I first saw them torn down last week. I have the date marked down. I calculate what they will owe on that property for that many days up until April, whatever I saw them at, let's just say the 13th. And they get prorated on the house in the fiscal 23 tax bill.
got it.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
It's fairly complicated.
It's not that complicated.
Kevin,
Yes.
I have a question on, I think it's the last line on the spreadsheet, this
Yep.
fiscal year 22 interim value adjustment.
Yep.
And that's for the overall town value, right?
Yep.
And you said that would probably be in the range of 1.5% to 2%. Right.
If you want to say it was 1.2 last year, if you want to be safe and say another 1.2, that's fine.
But based on
I
what you see, based on what you see right now, you think it's going to be in the 1.5% to 2% range?
Yeah, but I'd rather go conservative.
Okay, because I
I'd
think
rather give you
2%,
happy news.
2% would translate to about $4 million, right, of additional valuation in the town.
Yeah, which at this year's tax rate is about another 88 to 90,000.
Okay, so what you're saying is to be conservative, maybe we're looking at, 2/3 of that.
Yeah, because until I get those numbers worked out, I don't like making any prediction.
No, understand, but everything you've been saying and showing what you've shown for sales.
I mean, yeah, we had segments last year. We had certain categories of homes that went up to 2 to 3% last year. When you average it out, the whole town went up 1.2 on single family. So I'm really hesitant to project a number other than what we did last year. And that's only because sales are so strong.
Yeah.
If you notice, it was 0.50 the year before. It was a half a percentage. So, Susie,
On our revenue sheet on line 25, it's called new tax revenue. Is that a number that's arrived at by a formula, or is it that's not a place, the new tax revenue that Kevin's been talking about on this sheet? That's not where it could go, right?
No, that's just a calculation of the new proposed FY22 tax levy of 5,350,461 compared to the prior one.
So it's a comparison number, not a,
Right.
Input,
So
okay.
compared to last year, fiscal 21, 5,017,000.
okay. Just hoping.
Yeah, new growth is way up above.
Yeah, I know we were talking about new growth. I just didn't know what what's going on line
Yeah.
25.
well, the reason why I know, just so you know, the reason why new growth is going to be lower is we don't have the Wheelock Farm or the batteries anymore in new growth. Because that thing spread over 2 years, we got it for 2 years, but now it's just value increases, doesn't go in new growth anymore.
And our old new growth used to average around 30,000.
I've got, a gazebo, about 4 decks, 1 new house, and 3 kitchens, and that's it. There's
So
not a
we
lot
have
to
to make 30,000.
No, I mean, you're going to get a lot of value out of that house because that house is completely done on the outside. It depends by June 30th what it gets done on the inside. But, that could bring in 200,000 of value, but 200,000 of value, that's only 4,500 in cash. And don't forget, new growth gets calculated at this year's tax rate. So, if that's the biggest thing I got, and that's 4,500, I don't see a lot of new growth coming in.
Yeah.
Because again, I went and visited every property today just to see where we are. Other than that house, like I said, I got a gazebo, 3 decks, 2 sheds, and I think that's it.
Evan,
Yep.
just a quick procedural question. How are people's increased assessments communicated to them?
Well, by law, when we're in a recertification year, which is fiscal 23, I have to send everybody a letter saying the values of the town have changed. In interim years, you don't have to. We normally post it on the website. I have no problem notifying people. It's just a lot more work to do that. By law, I don't have to. I don't mind doing it, but If you want an individual letter, that's probably 3 weeks worth of work to generate all that.
And typically it isn't done that way. It's, people usually find out when the,
Tax bill show.
yeah.
I think the way,
Yeah, but if it is going up a big percentage, I would probably do what's our emergency
Town
notification?
announce, do a town
I
announce.
would do a town announce and put it on the website, just like I did this year for the abatement dates. I put out a town announce and abatement dates. Even though we only had 2 abatement requests, I wanted to make sure during COVID and town hall being closed, that everybody possible knew what was going on. So I'd probably do a town announce saying, if I knew the average value was going up like 2.5 or more, or anything, even 1.5, I'd probably do a town announce that say this is where we're going, and call me for your individual value, and we could discuss why.
Kevin, I think what Ken did was he notified us if our value went up over a certain amount. He notified those taxpayers, and I think that was pretty nice
Well,
thing.
quite honestly, I am going to send a letter to all the 61 and 61A people, because it's not that many. It's about 15, 20 people. It's actually one letter to Cole, so that saves a lot of stuff. But I am going to send a letter to them towards the end of the fall, telling them why the per acreage went up. We try to be very proactive when something like that goes, because if you've got you've been paying $98 an acre and it's going up to 119, you want to know why. And we don't do it, the state did it to them. And I want them to know that the Farmland Valuation Committee raised it. On notifying everybody, I guess that's something I'd have to discuss with the board. And again, it depends on how much effort. I'd rather do a town announce and say, contact me and we could discuss it, because it's a lot faster than trying to do 1,060 letters to everybody, that are individual.
We need to move along.
And in the past, I think you posted the new valuation so people could check it for them. You check for themselves and then call you with questions.
Yeah, I can always put the spreadsheet up on the website and put in the town announce, go check the website. But again, unless somebody added to their property or subtracted, it's going to be literally based on sales in the town. I mean, we're not changing anything else other than that.
Yep.
That's why Melody, when you called, I was puzzled, because I said, you didn't do anything to your house. And then I remembered I needed to look at which categories of homes were adjusted, because not all of them were. So I have no problem notifying people in the most cost-effective way, but I will tell you that it's not cost-effective to tie me and the clerk up for about 2 weeks generating individual letters and mailing them out.
But you can still make sure people get the information.
Yeah. I mean, I can do that, but it unfortunately in a COVID world, and it's an internet world, it sometimes is the easiest way is to notify people on the web, post everything. And I feel bad for the people who don't look there, but I don't know what to do there. It's a very good point, and I have no problem notifying people. In fact, the more people understand it, the better. But I remember, for instance, before I got here, when Steve Schmidt was chairman of the board, he and Ken put about 15 paragraphs up on the website, which I still have, explaining why it went up in the last recertification year. Pretty nuts and bolts about here's what happened and here's why. So I have no problem doing that.
We keep going.
So I'm sorry, folks. The best I can tell you is I'll have better numbers in June, and that doesn't help you with the budget, but that's the cycle I live in.
Next. Thanks.
You gave us something to go with.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate process that we're locked into these calendar dates across the state. You're not the only ones who want the numbers early. You know, if we went to a fiscal year, I might be able to do that, but we're not.
Yeah, but Kevin, based on what you said tonight, this 1,588 million,
That's guaranteed.
that's something that Becky can update her revenue projections like now, right? To reflect that increase?
Well, again, we don't know what the fiscal 22 rate is. I'm telling you what it equals at this year's rate. You know, I don't even want to speculate on the 22 rate
Oh, okay.
because
But if-
So,
I have no
did
idea.
add it. I did add it to the values.
Okay,
You know, it's the best we can do, and DOR advised to do what we can, working with the assessor.
But that's being conservative, right? Because we're expecting the tax rate to probably go up and the number will probably be bigger.
well, I can tell you right now, since you know, you lowered the tax rate artificially with the free cash last year. If you don't put that money somewhere, it's got to go back up to at least that area.
Right, right. So what we're using here for our estimate is actually a safe number.
Oh, very safe.
yeah. But just raising the assessed value of the town does not increase the tax revenue by itself.
That's correct.
All it does is reduce the tax rate. That's all we're doing here.
Very simple math, guys. When you know the tax levy, and I know the valuation, you just divide one by the other, and you got a rate.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, I'm half the equation, and town meeting is the other half. I mean, we really don't set the tax rate; we just divide.
Mhm.
So, I will tell you, next year when we actually know how the 3 electric accounts did, next year I can project that a lot better than this year. You know, and again, you may not see that value increase in those electric accounts because we'll already have it up to that level. And you're not going to see the forest, land, and agriculture go up again a second year unless there's a large jump in property values. So this is the best I can do at this point. I keep updating Becky when I have real numbers, just so you guys know. You know, I try to do it when I have it. You know, I should have new growth, except for the one house that I can't tell how far they'll get in by June 30th. I should have every other new growth number wrapped up by the end of next week. Because 90% of them are done.
Excellent.
You know, and as soon as I just need to go, I eyeballed most of them today. You know, if somebody says they're putting up a deck and I drive by and the deck is there and it matches the building permit, I don't even have to look at it. I already did, you know, from the car. I don't have to go measure it. Because I talked to Jim Hawkins, the building inspector, and he doesn't let it go beyond what he said. Like I said, I should have all except for the house going up, I should have every other number by next Friday.
Excellent. Then we'll find out if we can use it.
I still believe you can.
Well, it has to fit under the cap.
You know,
We'll talk. But
problem
that's
I have with 2.5 is very few people are alive. Anybody under 55 doesn't even remember. All right, folks.
Thank you.
Anything else, or can I eat dinner?
See ya.
Thanks, Kevin.
Anytime.
bye. Thank you.
All right. We want to go through minutes from last meeting.
Sure, take that document down.
You don't want to look at that anymore?
Oh, that's good. I've got that.
You got it all?
Memorized it.
Mhm. Minutes. Everybody has minutes?
Yep.
Anybody have, Jim?
Yes, number one with the first dot, Gail should be Gail, not Gayle, just for,
The other Gail,
Thank you. I think
Well, on that point, who's Gail?
wife.
Shouldn't it say town accountant?
or,
I'll just change it to town accountant.
I'm just
Okay,
saying for
good.
the record, somebody looking at this 2 years from now is gonna have no idea who person was talking
Good
to.
point. Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
I did not have any edits.
Me neither. That was the only one I had.
I have none. Bob or Melody or,
I don't know if it's worth putting in there, AJ, but I did make a point, which I think was a salient point in our discussion about training, police department, which is that the police department operating budget now does include some form of training. Training comes out of that line, and if we do contemplate putting another line in the budget, we should adjust the operating line accordingly. So I don't know if that could be noted, but
The current police department
operating budget line
operating budget.
includes training as part of what's covered by that line. And I think what the shortfall this year was really because of the tuition. It wasn't about
Right.
anything else. So I think somebody suggested that we add a line for training in the police
Yeah.
department's budget. I think you've noted that in your minute.
Right.
But the point I made was that we already have training in the budget, but it's in the operating line.
Got it. Okay, I'll add that.
Thanks.
Melody, anything else? Or let's see, Jim?
I wasn't there. I can't comment.
Okay. Somebody
Make a
want
motion, we approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
second? And can we take a vote?
Carbonitis, aye.
Chartier abstain.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye. Okay, the next three bullets for the agenda are all part of the same thing. The fiscal year 22 revenue, and they're all related to revenue and expenses. And Becky, you just sent us an update.
Yep.
It looks like the revenue is pretty much the same, though it does look like you increased the assessed value of the town.
Yep.
But the overall revenue is still pretty much the same as our last version.
Yep.
Okay, so the changes are mostly are all on the expense side.
Yes.
Some of these are ones we talked about in our last meeting. Or maybe,
I can review what changes I made.
okay, maybe that would be a good way to start.
Okay, so the first thing is I'm sorry, let me make sure I have my budget. So the first thing is I added in the COLA resulting from the select board personnel board meeting with a new formula that uses the New England Consumer Price Index with a 3-year rolling average. And that came in at 1.75. So currently the salary lines are increased by 1.75.
Okay,
The open space,
before you go on, what does that impact total? That 1.75, is that about 20,000 or
no, it's about 11.
about 11?
Not
Okay,
even, it's closer to 10.
11 sounds right, Becky. If it was 6,700 at 1%, 2%, so 2% would be 13.4, and this is 1.75 of that. I just
Yeah,
messed up.
about 11. But I
That
think
sounds right. That sounds right.
it's
Can I
about
ask-
10 or 11.
Can I ask someone to clarify what what the formula is that was adopted by the personnel board for this?
It was adopted by the select board. It was put together by the personnel board and recommended to the select board.
Let me just remind you that when we had this discussion with the three boards, we were going to review this. Our committee was going to review this, and I'd just like to get an explanation of what we're considering to thumbs up or down to town meeting on this issue. COLA. I'd like to know what the formula is, if I may.
So New England.
Because we had a discussion of all kinds of options, and someone suggested that the FinCom not be present at the discussion. So what happened? George, you know.
I can cover it if you'd like, or Melody, if you would like to. I've got the motion that the select board passed up on my screen. Is that okay?
I just don't know what it is, George. That's all.
I know, but I just want to know if Jim is okay if I spend the time doing this,
Oh,
or someone. I mean, I got the motion so I can describe exactly what the policy would be
yeah,
under.
I have
And
no
you're
issue
a
with that,
co-host
George.
now.
Oh, you want me to show it? Okay,
You
I'll bring it
share?
up.
Yeah.
Yep. I think. You all see this email that I sent to,
Got
all
it.
right, so the motion was, I can't read it because of this. Here we go. So basically, we found an index that represents inflation in New England. It's the CPI for New England. And what we're going to do, what we recommended and the select board approved, was taking the average of the increases for the last 3 years. So we took the increase to February 21 to February 20, the 12-month increase to February 21, 12-month increase to February 20, and the 12-month increase to February 19th. And we take the average of those 3. And each year we'll roll that. We'll do the next 3 years. We are going to calculate it out to the 100th place. That's why you see 1.75% increase. And we put a ceiling on it for any year where the increase is less than 1%, we were going to use 1% for that year. For any year where the increase is greater than 4%, we are going to use 4% for that year. So we're going to have a ceiling where if inflation gets out of control, we're going to calculate our average. In any year that's over 4%, we're going to use 4% for that year. So looking back at the last 3 years, they all, I think one of them might have been at 0.6. We used a 1 for that year. And the 3 years combined divided by 3 was 1.75. So last 3 years rolling using a New England CPI, minimum of 1% for any of those years, maximum of 4% for any of those years. And then the one caveat, if any of these, if the finance committee, the personnel board, or the select board has an issue with this method because there are extraordinary circumstances in a given year, that board can request a meeting of the 3 boards to have a discussion about the number that is calculated that year. And if the 3 of them agree, we can use something different. So if there was an if there was the Great Recession and inflation was through the roof, but we couldn't afford to pay it, then the 3 boards could talk about that and they could override the calculated increase under the policy. So we gave ourselves an escape hatch for those extraordinary years. And then the final part of the policy, which I didn't mention, you can see the last sentence. We're going to review the policy every 3 years. The personnel board is going to review the policy every 3 years. How did it work? What's going on in the world? What kind of feedback do we get back? And that type of thing.
George, the spreadsheet, do you have that right there? Or do you want me to put it up? I think it's really a good aid for people to visualize how it's being calculated. It was
Was I
attached.
the one that did the calculation?
I,
Actually, I might have been the one. I might have sent it out with this email. There
you
we go.
sent it out. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was attached.
Okay, excellent.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, this should be popping up. Here we go. Okay, so.
You gotta move. Okay, there it comes. There it comes.
So we use January's number. So here's the index. All right, so for the year and the 12 months ended January 2019, the index increased by 1.99. For here it was 2.25. And then for
George,
here,
you're not-
not
you didn't
showing
pull
on-
up. You need to lock on your spreadsheet to
It's
share.
blank for some reason.
Yeah.
You have to change your share to that spreadsheet.
yeah, right. Okay, bear with me. I forget. I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to share again and I'll pick that spreadsheet. As soon as I figure out which one it is, because I got so many of them open.
Jim,
Oh, I'm gonna pick share all windows. That one will allow me to jump around, right?
You can see it.
Can you see this?
Yep, I can see it. That's the assessment one.
Oh, this is
No,
the
that's the
assessment method.
region. That's the region.
Yeah, okay, so let me try again. Yeah, so
Find it.
I'm not used to using Zoom. I always used,
You want me to try?
no, well, yeah, if you've got it, I can get it because the problem is I got too many spreadsheets on my screen, so seeing which one it is, it's this one. I got it. You see
You
this
got
one, CPIO?
Yep.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. So we found this index for New England and we had the indexes. It's a new one. And it was indexed in 2017, December of 2017, 100, but that's not relevant here because what we did was we took January, 12 months, 12 months, 12 months. The increases were this, that, and that. Well, actually, this one was an increase. I don't know why I'm not able to edit the screen, but 2019 to 2018, inflation was 1.99. 19 to 20, 2.25. 21 to 20, it was less than 1%. It was like 6.2, I
Wait,
think.
no, it was 0.53, I think.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I can't edit the screen. I don't know why.
It's
So I
probably
can't
pretty
calculate
good.
it. But under our policy, the minimum is 1. Now, I don't think it made a big difference anyways because it's average. But we use the 1, and the average of these 3 numbers right here is the 175. And down here, everyone, you can see the policies basically summarized.
I think the difference was it was 1.6 before, and then it jumped to 1.75.
Yeah.
Because of that floor.
Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead, Jim, sorry.
and I'm apologize that I can't edit this. I don't get it.
George, did you happen to notice, either you or Melody notice, how the New England Regional Index compares to other local indexes like New York, New Jersey, or whatever the other ones are? I was curious to know whether we're in the middle, below, high, just curious.
The only other one we really looked closely at was the one that was for the East Coast. It was mostly Boston. And they were, I don't remember, Jim, exactly how they fared year to year here. So I apologize for that. I don't, but we did look at the Boston one and we just didn't think it was relevant for our area.
I think, as I remember it, Jim, the Boston one was higher. And we felt like we wanted to use this one because it would incorporate more rural areas, not just a city and an urban. So I think that's why we went with this one rather than the Boston one.
I was just curious whether New England was high or low in this sort of regional comparison. That's all. Since I'm
My
not-
memory was that it was lower.
Mhm.
Yeah, and my memory certainly is similar in that the index number was much higher. But the index started different years. So yeah, I think what Melody said is more accurate.
I'm just curious why we use a CPI that says urban consumers. I don't, is that the
Not a New
closest thing
England
to our
rural.
demographic?
There's really not a New England rural. And when you think
Yeah.
about rural in Massachusetts, I mean, everybody here works in Hoyoke, Amherst, Northampton. It's not really rural. We're not a farming community. We did talk about rural and we thought of even using a nationwide rural, and we realized obviously that's not very wise because we consider Iowa, Wisconsin, it just wasn't local enough. So we didn't see a New England rural consumer. But even if I did, Bob, I don't know if I would like that because what is that, Maine? It's not Massachusetts.
Just curious. I thought it just stood out to me. It said urban, and we're certainly not urban. That's for damn
No,
sure.
and Bob, we did have the very same conversation, and that's what we said as well. And I don't even know if there was a New England rural, but we realized, our population really works more in an urban area and buys and purchases in an urban area.
Susie,
Well, I really appreciate the personnel committee working out a ballpark way of dealing with this. So it's not sort of out in the weeds for all of us to manage. And I feel like the choices you made and the discussion you had is the discussion we would have. So I appreciate this and I hope it can go on. And after 3 years, we'll see how well it works, but it looks good to me.
yeah,
I think it was good that there was 2 FinCom members.
yeah. Yeah, hopefully this saves some time.
Yes.
Time from the select board, the personnel board, and the finance committee getting together on an annual basis and dealing with a lot of emotion and gut and
Yeah,
whatever
taking the politics out of it.
to come up with something, something that's more direct.
I assume this was approved unanimously by the select board?
Can I stop sharing?
Mhm.
Please.
You're doing it so well now, George.
I don't know.
Let's see
I
that.
couldn't use
assessment.
Excel when I was sharing. Now I can. That's weird.
Okay, Becky, what's next on your list?
Okay, I'm gonna resort to the agenda. So did everybody find their revenue and expense reports? Are we done with those? Or are we, I was just starting the expense, I think.
I think we got to number one. I think you just got number one done, Becky.
Hey, I'm on a roll. Let's go
Yeah.
to number two.
Unfortunately, I have to leave. Thank you.
All right.
Good night, Melody. Thanks
Take
for
care,
letting me
Melody.
know.
See ya.
Okay. Okay, so the other one we talked about, but I hadn't done it on the spreadsheet yet, was the Open Space Committee had asked for $5,000, and then they received FERCog said they had a grant of $8,000 that they could use. They still wanted a $1,500 balance. So the open space is at 1,500 now. It
What
went
line is that,
from
Becky?
100 to 5,000, and now it's back to 1,500.
Line 152.
Sounds good. Here it is.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, and then
One more time, Becky. Why did they want that? I'm sorry. Why did they want that back?
they have to send out a survey to the community. And the survey can't be an online survey. It has to be physical. So they need money for mailing and post it,
Got it.
do something physically, it's more expensive.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
they need money for that. And other creating maps and some other things for their updates. Okay, the next one was the highway longevity. Okay, so it's in the highway department. Steve Sullivan has a $500 longevity bonus due him this year. So you'll find that on line 118. I've got the accountant longevity bonus on line 14. That's $375.
Or who was that for?
Our accountant.
Okay.
Gail with an I.
I was just gonna say that. I was thinking that.
Okay, and then next one is the health district. I always have trouble finding that.
Towards the bottom, right?
Health district.
Yeah, it's, let's see.
It's 139.
139 County Health District.
Right, that's it. So that was a 2.5% increase on their budget. And then the veterans program is 4,521. Last year's was 3,818. And
What number is that, Becky?
145.
145. Thank you, guys. Now this one might be part of another discussion, but I realize we had the town building and repair line in there at 5,000.
What line is that?
It says that
Miscellaneous.
it's
160s range.
174.
174.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I took that out pending further discussion. That can always go back in. The insurance and bonds. Again, in miscellaneous, line 169. I reduced by $2,000. And I had, in further review of the retirement line, I had to boost that increase a bit more. So it's now at $11,000 higher at $236,000
Retirement.
on retirement.
Could I ask a question? I noticed. Can we look at line 144?
Sure.
I think in our last meeting, we decided to lower the 15 to an 8.
It says 7 here.
No, that's the increase. So
Yeah, I thought we decided the budget amount, we were going to decrease back to 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
That's okay. Our bottom line just went up.
That's great.
Right.
Mike,
Yeah, I'd just like to ask about that line. I've been having a couple of conversations with the director of the Upper Pioneer Valley Veterans Services District. And as members of that, he provides what he sees as the best estimate for what that line should be. And he's estimating that it should be $4,200 in that area. So I'm kind of wondering why this line is getting bumped up like that when we've got a paid consultant who's telling us that it should be significantly less.
Susie,
So we had this discussion with our treasurer, and he is the person that wanted to be ready to provide benefits for 2 people in case that happened. So now it's going back to 1 person, and that's what the treasurer recommended.
Well, I can understand that, except that the Veterans District Council, who knows this a lot better than the treasurer, has given the town guidance on that. So I don't understand what the thinking is. Why is it, and going back to a 1-person thing is not even based on what the district provides. The district, when they provide numbers for 1 person, it basically comes down to $4,200. That is 1 person.
Has he provided guidance to the town?
Not,
See-
not directly. He's only, I get the budget. Al Springer is our representative to the council. And I believe you're referring, there is a spreadsheet chart, but the treasurer is giving us guidance, given our experience in town. Our experience has been that we haven't, that the costs have been higher than average. The last notable person was a doctor, and it was 3 times the $8,000. It was over 30. So it depends on the occupation of the person that is taking, that comes into town. So it's an estimate, just like we're making an estimate. Because
Becky,
no one knows.
unfortunately, that information is not correct. The program, Chapter 115, is for people who are in very dire financial straits. So it's not like you're going to have a doctor come into town who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars or even $20,000 and be eligible for this program. It's I don't know where you're getting that information from, but it's not correct.
It happened in town. So we can discuss the Chapter 115. I'd be happy to read more about it, and we can talk about it offline. I'd appreciate the conversation if you would like.
yeah.
Well, I think it's a decision that that needs to be discussed amongst more than 1 person. And I would like to pass on that the director mentioned that we have not had a person in this program for 4 years. So you're trying to estimate take to account a potential risk factor with someone coming in who is going to generate a lot of benefit from this. And the possibility of that happen is extremely, extremely low.
Yeah.
So I'm,
And if that's the case, we end up not spending that money. And
well, and if that's the case, then I take exception to the fact that you're using the excuse of veterans to bolster this line item, and then end up not using the money and at the same time taxing people for it. So
well, no, it gets okay. Can we, Susie?
So we're not bolstering it. We came to this meeting talking about it. We had actually talked about it at last meeting. We're leaving it at 8,000. That's trusting that we will be able to cover it. And if something more happens, we talked about whether we would use FinCom reserves. So I feel like we've done this and I'd like to move on.
George?
The only thing I would add to that is if Becky has this private conversation, has this other conversation, and she finds out something new, we still have time to change it. So if new information becomes available, great, then we as a finance committee can change the number, but I wouldn't want to change it now based on what we know.
I would just say this, if Mike can get us a copy of the guidance from the person who runs the program for the county, I think that would be valuable information. You know, we don't need to tax people to add to our free cash. We need to try to budget reasonably and conservatively, but not just to freshen up and pump up our free cash. And so I'm concerned about trying to keep the budget as tight as we can within reason. And if this is a place we can reduce it a couple grand, that makes sense to me. So we'll revisit it. Maybe we'll get some more data from Mike or Becky.
I'm happy. I have the documents. I'm happy. I'll send them out to you folks.
Thank you.
I have another question about this budget. Becky, is the treasurer's salary the final salary for next year that we have budgeted? We budgeted for his full amount that he'll get paid
No,
based on the change?
that's not in yet. And two other contracts are not in. One, so I can add two of those after the PAF is signed off on for the treasurer and after the contract is signed for the town administrator.
Okay.
Susie?
Do we have the highway superintendent?
No,
contract?
that has to be done.
Okay, just check.
Becky, did you have any other items that you
No,
want-
those were the ones I changed. I just went in and changed the veterans to 8,000. And then we will, if I have anything, and then I'll have those two items to bring to the next meeting after the select board meeting.
Okay, I just have a question then, and that's on line 163, the unemployment compensation. And that's when I think Ryan recommended $10,000 for. Right now, we don't have anything in there. I know-
Because in the last couple of years, we've funded it through free cash. And so that's one of the discussions for tonight. How it
Yes.
should be funded. Should
Oh.
it be in the budget or should it be funded through free cash?
Yeah, so I guess, well, then you said, so we've done it in the past both ways, it sounds, right? Sometimes we've done it free cash and sometimes it's been budgeted.
Because the trust is new, we've only had the trust for 2 or 3 years. So that's a small track record. And in that time, there was a base amount of about $1,000 or $2,000 from the budget. And then the majority of the funds came through a free cash transfer.
Yeah. George?
So we have a fund right now and there's a balance in it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
About
It's
15 in the teens?
Yeah, I think maybe 13.
You know, we self-insure for unemployment, but a typical employer in large municipalities, and I'm sure even some smaller municipalities, they're paying health insurance on a regular basis, and it is an ongoing recurring expense. So having it in the budget does make sense. If we have a fund with a balance, it was my understanding that we did that to start that fund and then just have a minimal amount, a base amount in the budget each year to continually fund that. So when there's spikes, or I should say, unemployment claims, and that fund starts getting drawn on, we're always replenishing it. In ancient history, we would fund it, and sometimes we'd be $10,000 short because there were layoffs at the school, and we'd have to come up with FinCom reserve or something like that, as opposed to having a smaller amount each year and just keep the balance up so that as far as the taxpayers are concerned, it's the same number every year and there's no pain.
Yeah, and I think that sort of was Ryan's rationale for coming up with, or for recommending $10,000, I think, to be put into this for this budget year, right?
I think so. To me, the 10,000 sounds too high. But if we've got a balance, I don't know what our balance is, but if
The
our
balance
balance
is-
is,
13,805.09.
so if we added 5 to that, right, it'd be up to 23. Is that enough?
Well, do we have information about
Did
drawing down on that over the last couple of years?
2, 3.
Okay,
you
the
can see-
prior year, we used about 11, I think. And this year to date, we've spent 5,826. We started with a $19,000 balance.
Yeah, so we're between that, yeah, getting close to 10,000 a year spending.
Well, yeah, but again, it's one of those things you can't, I don't know if you can predict it. I mean, we certainly could predict it if we knew we cut a position in our budget, which we're not doing. So it fluctuates every year and it's volatile because some years it's going to be, this year it's 5. Becky said the previous year was 11, I think. So it is a number that goes up and down. The question is at what level can we fund it each year so that it's generally always solvent? I think 10,000 is probably too high for that, but what if we do get hit by layoffs? If we end up having layoffs next year, then we got a problem, but yeah, I don't know. I personally would put a number in here, but I wouldn't put in 10,000. I would put in something much less.
And would you put it in the budget or would you fund it with free cash?
Well, we put it in the budget here and have it covered by our revenues, our ongoing revenues. And then, Becky, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this is where I'm mistaken or my mind's not working properly. My idea is, what I'm trying to propose here is we put a number here, $3,000. That money gets automatically allocated to the fund, added to the fund, not paying benefits. And then the fund pays the benefits. Is that what happens if we put 3,000 in here? Would that go to the fund?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm proposing. A way to fund it, to fund the account, the bank account that we keep for unemployment claims, put money in it every year so that it always stays solvent, knowing that some years it could get really low. In other years, it's going to start to get a little packed, a little high. We can evaluate it and say, yeah, it's too high. Let's decrease what we're putting in from the budget until it gets socked, at which point, but I think in general, if you just had a base level amount we did every year, I think it would have very little effect year to year on tax rates.
I personally think you make a good point about having a good solid amount of money that's adequate for any contingency or any reasonably likely contingency. But I also think that, George, during this pandemic year, and also considering our cash position such as it is, we can afford to, and I could make an argument that we should fund this, get that kitty back up to whatever level is appropriate out of cash. We have the cash, that's taxpayers' money. Why add to the levy this year when we have cash we can transfer into this account, put it at the right level, whatever that level might be, to be prudent. But we don't have to add to it every year if we don't have any claims, right?
I thought the concept was to maintain it as a fund and to have it impact the budget in a predictable way each year. And that would mean determining some sort of modest input into that fund every year. Then it creates a sort of predictable trend. And the only time we're deviating from that is if it gets too big or if we have a crisis and there's there's a need, the fund is running too low. But I mean, isn't the concept to kind of maintain it as a fund?
Well, that's what George described.
Bob, Susie has her hand up.
So I propose that we get it up to 20,000. We can use, but 5,000 of that be an annual budgeted amount and another 2 out of free cash. And then if what's been happening around $10,000 draw, an average a year, we can keep going by adding 5,000 a year in the budget. And if we need to bump it up more, we can take it out of free cash. So I see it as a $5,000 regular cost, and whatever we need out of free cash to get it up to what this seems like a reasonable cushion, which might be 20,000.
Yeah, just looking at the 2 last years that we have actual spending on. Right, on line 161, or not, what line is this? This is 163. So 13,000 and 18, and then 9,000 and 19. So we're spending in that $10,000 range based on recent history. And we should be budgeting based on what we think we're going to spend. I mean, we should be, at least that's my thought. If we're thinking we're going to be spending something in the $5,000 to $10,000 a year, we should be budgeting for it.
Can you tell me, is there a balance in that account now that unspent?
Yeah, 13,805.09.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, so I think I agree with George. That's more than what we've spent on average for the last 3 years. So if we had to add 5,000 or something to that, we're going to be well over what we could expect to be paying in an average year. So I think the 10,000 number is too high.
The cost in FY18, the actual spending was 12,816.
Yeah, yes.
And in FY19, it was 8,825.
Yeah, that was just my point, Becky, that we've been averaging, at least the last couple of years we have records, we've been averaging in that $10,000 a year range. So that's, I guess, based on our recent history, that's what we should expect. Susie?
About 5,000 in the operating and free cash transfer if we decide on a number for what that fund should be, and then go forward with that. And then if we need to make another free cash transfer because it got drawn down too much and increase the budget line in another year, we can do that. We could just start today at something.
I guess the concern I have with free cash is something that, at least from my perspective, is something you spend when something unforeseen happens or unexpected. So why plan to use free cash now? Why not? If we think 5,000 is a reasonable number to build the fund to where we think we're safe, build it by 5,000, and then if the spending does jump up higher, unforeseen, then we pull in some free cash.
So you're thinking it should be 10,000 in the budget, and if we want to, we could put some more free cash against that. But you're thinking 10,000 is the rolling along number that should be in the budget.
Well, I'm thinking we have 13 now in the account, and if we budget 5 and we expect to use 10, then we should have a little bit of a cushion going into the. So I think we could get by with 5.
Okay.
Oh,
Then
wait.
the following year, we'd add another 5 and that'd bring it up.
Yeah. But I don't know if I just go ahead now and say we're going to put another so much free cash into it. I would just hold off until we see that we need to do the free cash.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I guess what I'm saying is I like the first, I agree with your first part, the 5,000. I'm just not sure I'd pull the trigger on a free cash number
Okay.
until it becomes more clear.
Is this something we would be appropriate to make have a motion and vote on it at this
I
meeting?
appreciate it.
All right, so I would propose a motion to allocate $5,000, a $5,000 annual contribution to fund our unemployment compensation line in our budget.
Second,
Yeah, just one question on that. You added another word to that, AJ, and you said an annual as opposed to just this year. Isn't that something we want to take a look at, or come up with something different to address where we think the support level needs to be, and fund it that way? But I think just saying on into the future, we're going to fund 5,000.
Well, I guess I assume that it's something that could be reconsidered, next year if we feel that $5,000 is the wrong contribution. But I guess the reason I put that word in there is I think the idea of that we should be funding this in a predictable manner every year and not relying on free cash to fund this is kind of the prudent way to go. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I see your point.
As a matter of just ordinary business, we're going to review this every year anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're just going to vote for it this year, budget $5,000, right?
Yeah.
So I'll call the vote. I mean, you've called the vote, Jim. I'll
Yeah.
support that.
Yeah.
Cover 9 aside.
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I.
Thank you.
Do we want to tackle OPEB, the OPEB budget? Right now, you've got 50,000 plugged in there, Becky,
Yeah.
I think.
So, what I would like to know is, for this year, are you all happy with the $50,000 for OPEB? We had some discussion about it early in the fall, but that's my question.
I'd like to ask the chairman, there's a bunch of things that I would like to bring up for the committee. I don't know if tonight's the night, but one of them was the whole subject of free cash. And then coming out of that discussion, that context, I would argue that we could fund OPEB this year instead of out of our budget, out of cash. But I don't know if tonight's the night to do that. So I won't say anything until.
I put together, Bob, a spreadsheet on all the key topics that we need to tackle in the coming
Yeah.
weeks. I sent about a week or so ago, and OPEB
right.
is in there. And at least my thinking was there's two different OPEB topics. It's just right now it's plugging something in for this fiscal year 22 budget. And then there's the bigger topic of OPEB and how does it get managed on into the future? Maybe using George's work as a starting point for that exercise. And then, free cash is also one of those key topics, or free cash and also, free cash stabilization, capital stabilization. Those are all topics that we need to tackle at a larger level.
Yeah, so I don't know if we're going to do that. Probably not tonight, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think my question for tonight is just zeroing in on the amount. And then you guys can discuss the funding at the next meeting when you've got all the issues that you've collected around that, potential
When you say,
cash funding or not.
when you say zeroing on the amount, you mean the amount to add to the fund?
Well, I just want to find out if, given where we are this year, coming back from a $220,000 free cash support to the budget, are you, given that being the case, are you okay with not increasing the funding for OPEB for this year? Or do you all feel that it still would need to be increased this year?
I personally don't think that we should be increasing it.
But we have a commitment we have to meet. 2.5 million, right? How are we going to get there in the next 20 years if we don't keep putting money in the fund?
We're going to put the 50,000 in. My question is, should we put more money
Beyond
in
that.
this year? That's my only question.
We'd have to sit down and run the numbers, right? And bring the numbers to FinCom. I mean, we've seen my analysis. My analysis shows if we keep it at 50,000, and the spreadsheet I have shows if we keep it at 50,000 a year, and we start actually using it, it looks like in 2033, I pulled it up on the screen. We don't hit the actuarial liability by 2040. We come close, but then beyond that, the numbers start going down and we run out of money in our fund in 2057. This is just forecasting, so it's tricky.
Yep.
But it does seem to indicate that 50,000 might not be enough. And I think that's the conclusion we came to in the last meeting when we talked about this in the fall. What's the right number? Hard to say.
Well, one thing, George, is look at what the other towns are doing. I think
Yeah.
we're ahead of them, aren't we?
No,
Not anymore.
no.
We were.
On the dashboard, on the DLS dashboard, I looked at how the towns around us are doing, and we're actually at, they're saying we might achieve full whatever in 2035. Pelham, Leverett, Amherst are all, one of them was 2033 and a couple were 2034. So it looks like we're not in the front anymore. Other towns have begun dealing.
And we kind of stalled out because the intention was to, once we hit the 50, was to continue on to a higher number, adding the amount from the budget. But then we took the year off and we spent, we made a large donation from free cash in 1 year too. So
Yeah,
it's a different
125, I
way
think.
to get to the goal.
Jim,
This is a very volatile topic, politically speaking, and the future is really uncertain as to what's going to happen. The state legislature tried to handle it in 2014, and everybody got pissed off, and it didn't work, and they sort of backed away from it. And there's so many things that could vary what this is going to cost us in the future. Nationwide health insurance, many things could come along that could change this. We ought to just put in the amount that we have been putting in up to this time, namely $50,000, which sort of puts us in the middle of the mix of all of the towns in Western Massachusetts, especially those who don't have a lot of big money to throw at this. So I would stick with the $50,000 figure for the time being, and maybe our state legislature will straighten out what has turned out to be a real boondoggle for. It's just been a disaster. In talking to Leverett and other towns, they feel that OPEB is going to bankrupt a lot of towns, and the state legislature has to do something about it. Now, whether they're going to do something about it or not is, of course, up in the air. But all I'm saying is it's very volatile, and we shouldn't go way out or way behind on this, and just go do what we've done before, which is 50,000.
George.
Well, what I would say, Jim, I think, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future on this, but the liability for towns, the responsibility to fund the benefits for their employees, I think is always going to, we're always going to be accountable to that, and we're going to have to be able to account for that. What's going to happen is hard to say, but we do know that we have an actuarial amount that we need to achieve by the year 2040. That the state has said. We have an independent agency doing the calculation, a certified actuary doing the calculation, and we have the state telling us what we have to pay. So 50,000 looks like we might run a little short. I suppose for a couple of years we can keep it at this level and we might be okay. Or we're going to have to, as Becky said, like we've done in the past, make a large infusion of free cash on top of this. I could go another year or two without the 50,000, but I really think we are going to have to make up for it at some point. And then the other thing I would say is, as far as using cash or not, for the 50,000, if we're only going to fund it for 50,000, that's in the budget. Funding it year over year is something we know we're going to do. 50,000 at a minimum. So I would be against funding the 50,000 line item that we currently have in the budget any other way than through the recurring revenues. So those are really, at this point, those are the points I want to make. Keep this 50,000 in the budget, fund it through the operating budget. I'm open if anybody thinks we should make that number bigger because it might not be enough. I'd be okay with what Jim said if we let it ride for another year or two. But I do think if we don't start coming up with more than 50,000 a year, I think we're going to fall short. Interest rates are going up in the next couple of years, so maybe the returns on our investments will be better. But for
Susie.
now,
When we had that discussion, we talked about getting to a point of funding that changed the interest rate for us. And so maybe we can keep the 50,000 in our budget and take some free cash and get us up to that amount so that we can gain the interest that, you know, and it's not a lot, it's not a big deal, but it's fiscally helpful.
Yeah, I go to, yeah, to George's point about maybe being able to go by another year or so, as my thought is, without any better information right now, stick with the 50. And as we drill into this whole OPEB exercise in the coming couple of months, that will help make things clearer on where we need to be going forward and how soon we need to be going.
Isn't there an update to the actuarial report that's supposed to happen? That's at some point. I thought it was like every few years they revise it.
Every
Yeah.
three, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Do we know
Sure,
what the last one was? Or?
I don't know. I'd have to look. Becky, you know?
I think it was 2 years. George, we were referencing when you did your report. I gave you the updates from the report 2 years ago, and that's the latest one I have.
Okay, so
In
So
about
to
a year,
AJ's
we'll have
point-
new information. Yeah.
to AJ's point, maybe we wait another year or two for the next one and then we reevaluate and we look at it and we look deeper in this. One thing I want to say to Susie's point, the current balance is 599. The treasurers in the past have told us we get a better return if the account had $1 million. So we would have to make up $400,000 to get to that threshold, just for
George,
information.
that's last year's balance. The current balance is 675,000.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hmm.
After last year's 50,000 plus interest.
And the interest rate, the interest goes from 9,900 to 42,000. Is that right, George? Are you looking at the chart? And so it says in 2027, the interest is 9,900, and in 2028, it jumps to 42.
Yes.
So that's a big jump. So if we could get there, we would be accruing better interest for ourselves.
Bob,
Bob has been
yeah.
busy.
I just wanted to respond to George. I'm not opposed to contributing 50,000 this year. The reason I suggested that we do the free cash, fund it through free cash this year, was because last year we did decide to put some free cash towards the budget to relieve the taxpayer of some of the stress of during the pandemic, and we're taking that out. And so I think to soften the blow of that, and that funding something like OPEB this year as a one-time deal from cash instead of from the regular budget would accomplish that, and it would still allow us to be responsible about that obligation. And I think that's true. There's a couple places in the budget that we could do something similar, and that is one place where we could just again soften the blow from taking the 152 out of the budget that we had in there to lower the tax rate last year and still meet our obligations. So that's why I'm not proposing not to fund it. Proposed not to fund it permanently out of free cash. I did vote to support when we threw 100 grand at it a couple of years ago. I was one of the members that voted for that, George. So, but that's why I'm proposing the 50,000 come out of cash this year instead of out of the regular operating budget.
yeah, I just, this is something we're going to be every year, at least 50. It's 50,000 now. It's going to grow from that. This is something we know we're going to be hit with every year. This is not an unforeseen surprise. To me, this is, in my opinion, budget. This is a budget item.
I think Bob just raised the
Could I
definition.
just say something? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think you guys all agreed that talking about what pieces or any pieces and the funding of free cash was for the May 4th meeting. It's 8:39 and we haven't finished the agenda.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks, Becky.
We're gonna have fun next week, next meeting though.
To be continued.
Well, can we agree that to keep it at 50,000 then, the OPEB number?
Sounds good.
Sounds right.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. Yeah. Anything else from a budget perspective, FinCom team member inputs, where we are right now? Susie?
Did we want to review the total by category so we see that so we see where the changes are?
The total, oh, by category.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because that's the way well, we might not be at this right point, but that's the way we do it at town meeting. So we would sort of rehearse looking at each category and saying, okay, yep, we understand those increases. Next.
What's everybody think?
I don't know if we need to do that tonight.
I mean, there's still some changes that we know are coming, so it does sound like a good exercise for us. When
Well,
we get the final numbers.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good exercise for us. It's definitely something I want to do. And if I do it tonight, in 2 months when we're at annual town meeting, I might forget a few things.
Okay.
I'd rather do it when we got closer, in anticipation of the budget hearing.
Okay, Bob?
Jim, I've just got a bunch of lines I want to discuss, but I don't know if tonight's the night. Should I try a couple or what?
Bob, are they for funding from free cash or are they for?
Oh, from just the items that are in the budget presently.
Yeah.
One thing that stuck out, it's a small amount of money, but I just wanted to ask Becky, the town clerk has a longevity budget. So I just don't understand how, I thought the town clerk just was hired. So I don't see how that.
Thought that was the accountant.
No, town clerk, I
What
think.
line is that?
That's line number, let's see, 44.
$300 for longevity bonus for clerk. Yeah, that doesn't look right.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that should come out.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome. The legal expense, I just want to ask you a general question about legal expense. Is that going to continue to rise like this, or is there something we can do about this? Do we have to hire a lawyer? I mean, full-time staff or something?
I'm sorry,
line
continue
is
to
Legal
rise?
expense, line 41,
Yeah, so
going up.
it's at $15,000 like it was in 21 and in 20. And I was way
Oh, so
over
it's-
the prior 2 years.
Okay. I looked on the other budget that I was looking at, it wasn't a zero increase, it was a significant increase, so that's changed, I guess.
No, I
That's why I
don't think,
took that out of- I
maybe,
took it out of the
I think
March
you must have been looking at a different line, because I don't think I've touched that one.
Okay, well, sorry about that.
No problem. I rather double check. That's a good thing to do.
And then on the town hall now, again, we can talk about this later, but you took the 5,000 out of the building repairs, but in the town hall or town buildings, we have two lines. One is equipment maintenance and the other is equipment building repair.
Could you tell us the lines first? Because then
Yeah, equipment maintenance is 61. And then in the same
All right, when is
category,
that, Bob?
61,
61. Okay, thanks.
and repairs is
67.
yeah. I guess that repairs is the total. I don't know.
We're actually-
Repairs is 67, that's right. So I just like to know, as a member of the building committee, how do we sort this out? We've dealt with building repairs, equipment maintenance and so forth. So now we had a line at the end of the budget, miscellaneous, separate, that's being removed. But what sort of funds are going to be available for building repairs and how are they administered in the budget or in practice?
Okay, so the equipment repairs are elevator, HVAC, all the equipment in the building.
Yeah.
And I run short every year because of the increasing cost of the elevators. So instead of having inspections once every 5 years, I now have them every 2 years, and they can cost over $4,000 because we've got the elevator and the lift. So, and then we've got all the costs for just maintaining the, having, if anything goes wrong with the plumbing, I've had sewer issues, I've had, stuff coming out of toilets, that and plumbing, all kinds of different issues like that. That's the repairs for town hall. So the equipment repairs are all the elevators and everything. Building committee has never had anything to do with any of that. And then the other repairs are the things that happen in the building to the day, like that I have to keep maintaining equipment. I mean, maintain the building.
Systems, and those are aging systems, so we would.
I know, Susie.
No, I'm just saying, yeah, in the anticipation of that, it would increase cost.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have this discussion later when we meet with the select board, but I just want to know what, from the building committee, which in general was always involved when plumbers came and so forth to town hall and repairing windows that didn't close and so forth.
Yes,
Where that
repairing
money comes from
windows
now.
and one-time elements that are construction, but I didn't call, and you did help when we had that big leak and I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Remember that leak that water was spraying all over the boiler room and stuff?
Yeah, but I'm just wondering how do we get, where the money come from for that account now that you're removing that line? How does this work?
The repairs for buildings.
That's where the money comes from.
The building line. I mean, the repair line.
Okay, fine.
In the budget.
Right.
So line 174 was zeroed out. Is that what we're talking about? Where is that accounted for?
Okay, so right now it might not stay zeroed out. I just, as a base, we have some time to talk about it and I didn't want to make any assumptions. Right now, there's the repairs that we have gotten funded through town meeting, Bob, for the building committee are in a separate fund. I think it's under Fund 30.
Right.
Oh,
And it
okay.
has,
It's a balance now.
yeah, I think currently it's about $20,000, I think.
Okay,
or
good. So good, then that
15 and 30,
would be
and
good. That's useful information.
Yeah, and that's the money, all that money is allocated for stuff. That's allocated for the window and other stuff in town hall. And I just did, I was,
Good. Now I know, understand. I didn't see that number, so it's in the expense report, I'm sure, so.
it is. And if you have, I'll find it. If you have trouble
Yes.
finding it, we can, that's where it is.
Okay, thank you. And
Sure.
also
Bob, did you
another question.
Bob, did you have any other items?
Yes, I do. The internet and telephone, we are now on Shutesbury.net. And I see that the total.
Tell
amount of
us the
money for
line again. It helps me to look at
those,
the
the internet and telephone are 65 and 64.
line. Thank you.
And the total went up. I thought that we would be getting a super deal from Jim Hemingway and his friends there at the NFP. So I think the total should have gone down from Verizon to our present server. So why are we paying more?
Okay, Bob, the total was 21,000 and the new budget has it at 14,000.
Total for both of them?
Yeah, 9,000 plus 5,000.
Did I add those wrong?
Maybe you just looked
Oh,
at
9,000.
22 then 21.
Isn't 9,000?
9,000's heating.
Yeah, you gotta go down one more line.
Okay, so I'm the cockeyed one, sorry.
So it's telephone.
64 and
Internet and telephone.
64 and 65.
Okay, 1 second, let me get my, sorry about that.
But the two,
Okay, so we never had a line in for internet before, and we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I just saw that the total went up about $2,500 for those two lines. And so that occurred, I thought that we would be paying less for that now.
But if you look at the actual expenses, we just never properly budgeted for the internet. So the actual expenses in FY18 were over 10,000. They were over 10,000 in FY19. They were 9,500 in 20. And now I'm trying to figure out exactly where they're going to come in, because we had some installation charges mixed in with the earlier costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
But those lines that just stuck out of my mind there.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
So,
On line 166, the OPEB, we already did that. Line 173, the library. As you all know, I'm not in favor of funding this library savings account, but if we are going to fund it, I don't understand why it doesn't come out of reserves rather than out of the budget. It is a capital account. It is
Bob,
going to a
again, this is what
capital.
we decided we'd talk about May 4th, right?
Okay, then I'll put that one off. And then the last thing we're going to talk about on May 4th is the $112,000 for whatever, it's for the former
What-
dump truck and
what
fire
line are
The
you
debt
on?
capacity. It's the debt capacity
debt
line.
capacity, but we have,
What line is that?
170.
that line is 178. And then I'm done for now. We'll discuss that later too, is that right?
Well, we need to discuss that line when we're talking about how we're going to fund all these items that are going to be constructed next
Capital.
year, specifically the culvert and the roof.
Right, but that is we're funding something, that's just going into the
Okay,
the reserves, right?
Yeah, Bob, you know the concept. We've talked about the concept 1,000 times.
Yes.
We know the
Like talked about
concept.
1,001 times.
Yeah, we're going to look at what kind of debt service we have for next year. And many of us, I'm going to propose, to the extent that we have debt service next year, that we decrease this number. But when we don't have debt service, it makes sense to have this placeholder in here. And yeah, we can debate that on May 4th. I'm happy to debate that, but taking that out of the budget is not going to save us money in the long run.
Bob, is that your list?
That's my list.
Okay. Jeff,
Yeah, line 178 was my question. I mean, this is the old debt service on the dump truck and the fire truck, which was.
we don't, those are gone. Those are done.
Right.
Yeah. It is
But-
not the debt service on those.
Of course not, but the same number has been converted over to an ongoing expense, it seems, in this transfer to capital stabilization. I mean, that's an expense that has to be raised, and I've never understood the rationale, George, that you just referred to. And where can you refer me to help me understand this rationale of?
If you look at lines 155 through lines 161, when we make capital purchases and we have to fund those with debt, let's use 155, the principal payment on the fire truck. So, we made, I think it was 5 years of payments on the fire truck. We made a number of years on the dump truck, and principal items, the principal portion of those payments are on 155 through 157. And then the interest on those loans is 159 through 160. And so when you have an operation like the size of our operation, where you have all this equipment and all these large capital expenses, the larger capital expenses, you just can't necessarily pay cash for those. You want to fund them over their useful life or a portion of their useful life. And so if you look at the total debt service line, the first year is 138.8, and then 133.7, 138. You want to have a certain amount in your budget funded from your ongoing tax revenue, because it's an ongoing expense. And so in the years when that number goes down, when that debt service is paid off, we're in an in-between year because we're not currently not paying debt. We keep that cost in the budget by funding the capital stabilization instead of just taking that right out of the budget. Because if we took it right out of the budget and then another fire truck was needed, or the culvert is needed and we need to finance it, to add that back into the budget would be to raise our expenses it would cause a big spike in our tax rate. By having a placeholder like this capital stabilization expenditure, if you will, in there, we've got it covered in the tax rate. If we add a debt service item next year, let's say $50,000 next year, principal and interest, we would lower this by that 50,000. The net effect would be no increase in our expenses. Now, the other good point of this, the other benefit of this is that 112 is available to us for capital items in the future. So we'll have down payment money for the culvert. We'll have down payment money for the roof, so that we can then fund through debt service a reasonable amount of debt service at the 130,000 level, although we're down to 112 these days, 112,695. So it keeps the impact of capital purchases over time. It provides predictability. It gives us no volatility in our tax rate because it's already built in. And this part of cash helps us fund those future things. That's the concept. And that's what we've been doing.
George, don't you think that when we don't need to borrow for capital facilities, the taxpayers might appreciate a drop in their taxes for a year or two or more until the necessity arose again? And then you make the case that you need to borrow for that.
Well, that can be, that can be debated, Jeff.
And are we going to do this with everything that we borrow? Is just take the payments when they're paid off and then just keep making the payments for? I mean, it's going to be hard to talk people into agreeing to borrow if it's never going to get paid off.
Well, there's always going to be capital items. We're always going to have to fund capital items. Sometimes the debt service runs out before the next capital item comes on. That's why this is here. And by having this here, when we buy the next item, we can keep that, we can maintain the low debt service number of 138 because we have that cash for a down payment on those future items. That's a debate that can happen on town floor. Certainly, I think it already has, and it'll continue. Taxpayers have to decide. I think this method is a great method. I believe in, I think fluctuations in the tax bills is not to anybody's benefit in the long run. And I think it makes it hard for people who are living on fixed budgets and are trying to maintain that budget. The 1 year, be very happy about the decrease they're going to get. And then the next year, find themselves in a difficult position because they just got, a large increase. That's the concept. That's the thinking that I have when we talk about this.
Susie.
This is not only George's idea, this is in the Finance Committee handbook. It's in the recommendations from Joe Markarian. It is about meeting the principles of a budget, which is to keep it steady and predictable. You can read it in the handbook, and there's a reason for that, like George has just presented. And because we're the Finance Committee, that's our mission, that's our charge. So rather than just yo-yoing back and forth, we're prepared, and being prepared can give the town a sense of security and not unanticipated surprises.
For the record, this is not George's idea. This policy was in place before George was on the Finance Committee in 2009. I don't want to take credit for this work. This is not my work.
Yeah, let me get a last comment and then I'll stop.
Jeff, Bob is next.
Okay.
Bob is next.
I just want to say to Susie, like, our charge really is to represent the interest of the taxpayers. That is our fiduciary. And as far as I'm concerned, we have a very, very high level of reserves right now. I think our level of reserves is in excess of what is reasonable. And so in that, basically to put it in plain English, we've overtaxed people to produce that level. And I think we should reduce it. We should certainly not have borrowed money for the fire truck and the dump truck, in my humble opinion. I voted against that, thought we should have paid out of our reserves for it. But the argument that I got then, I don't know who made the argument from finance then, was that we had to borrow money to keep our interest, to keep our credit rating up or something. I don't, that having a certain amount of debt was good for our budget. I don't buy that. Maybe I'm a simple-minded person, but I think if you have savings, and you can pay for something and you have reserves that you accumulated specifically to buy things like fire trucks and like culverts. Then when the time comes to purchase such an item, you pay for it. You don't borrow money.
All right, Mike,
Yeah, just, you're talking about maintaining an even keel as far as, tax rate and tax expense is concerned, but last year we used $220,000 to lower the tax rate, and that's going to go right back up this year. So, I don't understand that particular point. And
Exactly, yeah.
also the idea that we've got a lot of money in cash right now, and why do we go out and borrow when we've got the cash available, and why do we keep putting money into that
I
if we
think we're
don't have
getting
to
off
use
the
it?
agenda. We're getting off the agenda here a little bit. That's really not on the agenda, that topic. We do have some plans to get into that in the future.
Yes.
George?
And I was just gonna say, that's what I was gonna say, Jim, and we're gonna have better information.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to meet with the treasurer. We wanted to find out what the expenditures were gonna be next year and what the financing options were. And then we would have all the information we need to really have this debate in the context of the fiscal 22 budget.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's 9 o'clock.
And we're just getting going. Jim?
Speaking of having information at our fingertips on May 4th, Becky, have you put out the RFPs for the culvert yet? Do we know, do we have any information on what contractors have told us it's going to cost us?
I have the construction estimate and we're working on getting the RFPs out this week for the culvert. I'm not sure if they're gonna go out, but I'm working on them with the company, with the engineers.
So we have the roughly that $900,000 estimate that the engineers gave us some time ago. That's the
No, they
only
gave us $1 million estimate.
$1 million estimate. Yeah.
Yep, it hasn't come in much lower than that. And we are trying to get it out so we have results back before annual town meeting.
Yeah, we do need to have that figure. It would be very important. And I mean, a hard figure from a contractor. We're going to really have to pay through the nose for this anyway, but we might as well get the bad news sooner rather than later.
And the roof estimates, we're working on getting that contract. I mean, that RFP too.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks. Have we covered anything else we want to get into as far as projections for expenses or revenue 2022? We good? Ready to move on? Our next item was have a quick discussion on FinCom topic scheduling for the remainder of the fiscal year. I sent out just an initial stab or an initial draft on that about a week or so ago. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at that. I thought I'd just use that as a starting point for us to digest. Does everybody have that, or do you want to bring it up on the screen?
Bring it up on the screen.
Okay.
I've got it.
Okay, let me,
We accomplished the first item.
and Becky, I can share?
Yeah.
Okay, can everybody see this? Can you all see that spreadsheet?
Yes.
FinCom agenda topics? It's visible to everybody?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so what I try to do is just capture the different things we've been throwing out there in our meetings over the last number of meetings on things we really need to drill into and focus on. So I try to capture those, and that's the first column. And then I threw out at least an initial date that, a proposal to when we would get these on the agenda for one of our meetings. And then I put in a column, a third column on who would lead or who would be prepared to run that particular part of the agenda. And then some just brief notes, just some background information. A lot of this comes from information that Becky has sent us over time. So I referenced different documents that we have, mostly through Becky. So that's just the initial thinking to put this initial draft together. One other comment under the dates. There was some discussion about our next meeting being either the 4th or the 11th, but I think we're all in agreement that we would meet the 4th of May. Okay, so I'll just change these dates to the 4th. And then I also thought I've looked at 2 weeks out from there. So I'll just change those to the 18th. But again, this is just initial proposal. As far as content on these agenda items and when we would do them and who leads the discussion, whatnot. So let's have at it.
Well, under the OPEB section, can we agree we finished row 6? And as far as row 8 goes, OPEB funding analysis, I think we decided we'd wait till the actuarial report was available. So until, the actuaries are back in town and produce the report.
Okay, I'm sorry,
push
which
that
one
back
are
up.
you on now?
Row 6, row 8, OPEB funding analysis.
Yeah, and
That-
okay. And what's your, I'm sorry, I missed your point.
Well, I think we decided that we wouldn't do another analysis on this subject until we had a new actuarial report, which may not be for another year or two.
For another year?
Well, Becky said the last one was 2 years ago. It's every 3 years, so we may not see one. We're not going to get a report in time for August.
Okay. And you don't think this is worth the project until we have an updated actuarial report?
Isn't that what we decided as a group? I think that's what we said.
Yeah. That seems to make sense to me.
Okay. All right, so we'll take this off then.
Or just as date is to be, TBD.
Yeah, date to be announced.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll email, I'll find out from Ryan when the next report is available.
But line 7, what is the plan status guideline that we'll be doing in mid-May? What's that one?
Let's see, what was that?
That's under OPEB.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I got that.
Probably this-
I'm trying to think through Susie's question. Plan status and guidelines. Yeah, it really sort of fits with, well, what are the requirements? This is all about what is the state guidelines? The state guidelines, what are our requirements? Are we on track with meeting those requirements?
So maybe that
And
goes.
I thought, that's why I put Ryan in here. I thought maybe he might be the closest to having some knowledge on that.
But haven't we decided pretty much how we're going to do FY22? And so line 7 and 8 would be stuff we do together once we get.
I think so. I think they would be together.
Okay.
That makes good sense.
So we'll just change this to TBD.
Okay. And so we have 3 possible May 4th agenda items: the free cash one, the stabilization one, and the capital plan. And the capital plan would be, it would sort of start that discussion, right?
Yeah, I put in the capital plan. That was originally, we're going to have that tonight. But I don't think the capital planning committee had their meeting, so that. we
We're
won't be
planning
able
on
to-
meeting tomorrow.
What's that?
Tomorrow,
Having a meeting tomorrow.
No.
Yeah, my only question about the May 4th meeting would be, is Ryan attend?
What's that, George?
Whether Ryan can come.
Yeah, on the 4th, because we would want to know what he thinks not that I'm suggesting we do it, but what would financing look like if we were to go with debt service? What would the interest rates be? What would be the recommended term of the loans? For, I'm talking specifically the large items, roof and the culvert. So that we can decide how to actually fund those, but we can't make a decision to fund them. We know what it takes to put cash against them. There's not a whole lot of analysis there, but what would the debt service look like? And what level of debt service might we be comfortable with, if any?
Mhm. So you're saying you think Ryan should be at those meetings and you wonder if he can be there on May 4th?
Yes.
We should know pretty soon.
Okay, so Becky, you're gonna check on Ryan's availability, and then if he's available, we'll keep that on the agenda for the
Perfect,
4th.
yeah.
Oh, so we had 5 things, one.
Yeah, and again, I was just throwing out some initial dates here,
Yeah.
Susie.
Yeah.
So
So the warrant articles, we won't have finals. You'll have roughs for the 4th maybe, but we won't be reviewing them till the 11th. I think the goal is to review the
Oh, I see it.
warrant on the
Mhm.
11th.
Mhm. I see it.
And I think, yeah.
I'm sorry, did you all have another change here?
Warrant articles.
It's
30.
line 30 says 540, the warrant articles, but it's also said on line 28, final review in prep for warrant articles. So
Yeah,
I think that's, yeah, if they're both 511.
Yeah.
Well, the difference between one is getting ready for it and the other one is actually approving them. So
Yeah.
is that a distinction we need to make?
Okay, so are you meeting on 511?
Yeah, I think we are going to.
Okay, so if we're meeting on 511, the approval for town meeting should be on 511, and the final review and prep up for warrant articles should be 5-4, right?
yeah, just reverse
Yeah.
these.
Yep.
Bob,
Can I ask a question, just general question about sequence chronology? We're having a hearing for taxpayers and for the public. Don't you think we should put it before some of these other things or decisions are made so that we can get input from
No.
the public, or is the meeting
No.
that, the hearing we're having just an informational meeting?
yeah,
We're the ones who recommend the budget.
Yeah.
it's
Okay, that's the question.
it's an info session.
Okay,
We finished the last one. There's a lot of things here on 5-4.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, somebody said we are meeting on the 11th. Is that official?
I think
Well,
we need to.
I think we need
We
to.
probably need to, yeah. So maybe some of these ones from the 4th, we move to the 11th?
Yeah, will the other warrant articles be drafted by the select board by
Yeah,
by?
it won't have been reviewed by the select board on 5-4, so
that
we'll
one?
see. But we can go over the ones that are financial just in theory. I mean, they'll be written.
And will the select board be meeting on 5/11?
Oh dear God, yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of 511, is it possible to do 510 or 512?
Okay with me.
Me too. I can do it.
512, 510, either way for me.
Why don't we go to 5/12 and then whatever the select board had figured out on 5/11
Yeah.
will
that makes
be
sense.
part of our meeting.
So
That'd
we're
be
going
great.
512 now?
5-12 for the warrant articles.
Okay.
I'm gonna, yeah. I've got capital plan here that was supposed to be tonight. Should we move that to the 4th?
Yes, we have to.
I think we really have
Well,
no.
we're not going to be tonight, that's for sure.
No.
What are we gonna talk about?
Well, no, well, the reason I say that, I mean, obviously something's gonna have to give on the 4th.
Well, the warrant article review got taken off of there because we don't have them by 5/4. So line 28, that's not going to be 5/4.
That's combined with the other, so that'll be 512.
So both, they're
Because
both,
your other discussions about the capital plan and stuff impact the warrant articles.
Oh, yeah.
okay, so you want me to change this line 28 to the 512?
Yep.
We have way too much on the 4th.
Some of it's pretty related. The stabilization and capital stabilization and free cash are all
Single
touching the
conversation.
same topic.
Yeah. But then there's capital plan.
That's a big one.
Mhm.
How about recommend that we start the meeting at 6? Have another hour of wakefulness?
Woke.
Yeah, it might be the only way to, because we really can't push that off, the capital plan. We really need to get there. And we need to get there with these other items too, you know. I could be there at 6.
On the 4th?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that? Anybody?
Yeah, I can.
That's okay. I think we're going to also need to just keep the public comment piece of that meeting like super short and concise, and because
Yeah.
those tend to take us, I think, even though I'm not saying they're not important issues.
Yeah, and I think, I agree. And I think all of us too need to stay on task too, on focus on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, 6 p.m. for the 4th.
And Ryan's a go for the 4th.
Ryan's good.
And you told them 6?
Oh, I just told him 7. You want me to tell him 6 now? Or do you want to do capital plan first?
Oh, yeah, I guess we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can change it later if you change your mind.
No, it probably makes sense. We want to have the capital plan discussion probably feeding into these other, because having a knowledge of the capital plan is going to be an important piece of this other discussion,
All
right?
right, I'll change him to 6.
Yep. And the American Rescue Plan impact, I haven't heard that the guidelines have been clear enough to know how it's going to affect FY22. So I don't think it's going to be in place. I don't know. But FY23, we don't have to, we can put that into the summer, the American Rescue Plan, unless Becky, they know how it's going to.
But the reason I put this as 22, 23 is the rescue plan impacts both years.
Yes.
So.
But does it? Does it in terms of planning? Will we know enough information that we can plan for FY22 in the American Rescue Plan?
I have hopefully a very solid meeting on it tomorrow at 2 p.m. Where I'll be able to give more. So if it does, otherwise we could move it to the May 18th agenda or in June.
Okay, so I'll leave it on the 4th for now, but depending on what you come back with, Becky.
Yeah,
we can
leave
move
it there
out.
because if there's, because I know the one capital item, the heating system is out there. So we would want to know at least if we can but we're gonna probably have to rely on others, maybe special town meetings. I'm not certain, because there's a lot of questions up in the air about the heating system.
Very much so.
Always.
Okay.
All right, are there any other items missing from this or that we should be including or?
I I believe that the AMP discussion is going to, as it unfolds, it will have some bearing on our economy. And, but I don't think it's going to unfold. I don't know what its time frame is.
Well, I think, Susie, that would fall under the long-range planning. It would be a part of that conversation.
Yes.
You know, I think that's going to be one of the variables when we're looking at future revenues and what could happen.
Mhm.
Bob brought up a point earlier, Jim, about how we funded a portion of the budget last year with $220,000. And even Kevin made reference to the fact that that's all, that money is currently not in our revenue, which means that's going to cause a big jump in tax bills. Now, you know, I hear some people saying it's okay. Well, I think, do we want to provide some sort of a soft landing for taxpayers from the 220 to zero? Which of course it's not, because some items have also fell out of the budget. And so it's not going from 220 to zero, but there's still an impact on the taxpayers. And so I'm wondering if we need to do some sort of an analysis of that to talk about, maybe we do want to put some cash to the budget to make a soft landing again. And then in 23, be done with funding the budget with cash with no specific purpose other than to help taxpayers. So I think that might be an item we want to include in our future conversations for the 22 budget.
George, I guess I'm a little, just to help me understand this a little better. With Kevin's, what he was rolling out there is some higher assessments.
Well, at some point he did.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, at some point he did say that we're going to have a large tax increase because of tax rate increase, because last year we had funded a portion of revenues with cash, and this year we're not. So that's the context of his reference to it.
Okay, yeah. And well, we talked about that last year when we did use the free cash, that it would cause this issue this coming year, the next year, right?
Okay.
And
And we're okay with that happening? Is that what you're saying? Is that
Well,
what your decision of finance committee last year?
I think we need to look at, once we get to this point, where does the tax rate look with the current scenario, with where we have the current revenue and expense projections?
Well, that's why I'm thinking maybe we need a line for it.
Okay.
They'll put it in the 5/12 meeting, do you think?
That's okay with, yeah, it makes sense to me.
So on line 30, maybe put it as part of line 30. So it's just talking about thinking about the tax rate and a soft landing, moving from FY21 to FY22.
In terms of,
I just, if I may, I just want to say what I was trying to suggest goes along with what George is talking about here, which is if we funded some items such as OPEB out of the cash account for this year, instead of funding it from the regular budget this year, and we funded something like, if we're going to fund the library savings account, if that came out of cash instead of out of the budget, and if also line 178 was not funded this year, you know, all those things together, or some combination of some of them, could provide a lot of relief while we still covered those obligations or those necessities, and we could cushion the blow and make at least a transition this year, because we still are in a pandemic year. We still have emergency for a lot of our taxpayers.
I think there's a pretty big difference between talking about items being funded out of free cash, which has its own little philosophical discussion, and the other discussion of what free cash in general to put into the budget, like it was done in 21, to ease tax rate once we figure out what the tax rate actually looks like.
Well, that's just semantics to me. So
Well, it's not.
bottom line is taking free cash from one place, putting it in another. That's all.
Becky,
I just wanted to say that the tax rate we're looking at with the budget that's here with almost 50,000 unspent in it currently is $23.68.
Which is a 1% increase over last year. Is that right?
Well, not tax rate. If you're talking about tax rate, the tax rate for last year was 22.61, right?
Okay.
that's more than 1%.
Yeah, my notes are wrong.
Yeah, I think the increase in our budget is 0.4%. It's only going up like $26,000 over last year. So the big bear we're trying to make up for is the $220,000. But we've cut it almost in, we've done pretty, so we dropped from a tax rate over $24 down to $22.61 last year. And this current budget, the way it is, well, it's really going to be lower. It'll probably, but it's $23.68.
It's going to be lower based on the new assessed value that Kevin already put out there, right? That'll lower it some.
That's already, the 1.58 million in the value is already in that calculation.
I see.
It's just the budget's not final. And right now we have a surplus of almost $50,000. I think there's going to be some impact to that, but certainly not the majority of it. It'll be small.
So can I have a little help in reading the expense sheet, the final line, number 181, and it says gap, and it says 46,947. That is not a shortfall. That is, we have more than.
Yeah.
Correct.
There's more revenue there's more revenue than expenses.
Right.
Yeah, if you look at the two lines above it.
Right, it would be a parentheses if it was actually a gap.
Right.
Okay, just checking. I want to make sure I understand it.
Well, it's a gap, but it's an overage. We have
Well,
more
yeah.
revenue.
We need a double negative here if we
Well,
want.
what we need is a different description on line 181.
No,
Well,
where
the
it
reason
says-
we use a gap is because a gap goes in two directions. It's not a surplus
understand.
or.
Okay,
No, I do understand,
and I
Becky.
just want to make sure I understand it. Okay.
I might say gap dash surplus slash, and then in brackets, deficit.
Okay, I'm not going to do it because at the end of the day, this number can't have a surplus or a deficit.
It'll be zero.
It has to, when it goes to print, this budget will be at zero.
Okay.
That's why I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just.
No, Becky, I totally get it. But for our purposes, when we're talking about this, we just all have to have that in our heads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if the expenses are lower than your revenue, you're looking good. kind
Just
of.
visually, when you look at the numbers of plus or minus, yeah. So plus is good and a minus is bad.
Right.
Okay, we've fixed our calendar.
It looks beautiful.
Listen, everybody okay with where we ended up?
928.
And
Yeah.
Ryan.
No, well, we're not, I'll send you this, I'll send you the updated version, AJ, for the minutes.
If you could send it to everybody,
Okay, I can do that.
that'd be
Please.
great. Then everybody will have it.
What a concept. Is there any committee reports that anybody wants to? Susie, school.
Yeah, I want to say they're back to full, but the regional school controls the busing contracts, and the bus company's having a hard time finding drivers to meet the change in schedule where now the elementary kids go in earlier than the senior and middle school. So they're having a trouble finding drivers. So what they proposed was to have the elementary school kids on the buses with the high school kids, and that sets off a lot of alarms. And that was the regional school solution to dealing with this change in bus schedules. And so the regional school had rejected the idea of putting middle school kids on the buses with seniors if they brought the sixth graders up. So they didn't want the sixth graders up on the buses with the seniors. So it's quite a mess. And it has to do with the pandemic. It has to do with changing contracts. It has to do with changing time schedules for the two different school age groups. So they are still working on it, and they're trying to find a way out of this. But it just reminded me of how hard this whole thing has been to manage. And I don't know what the upshot of that particular one is, but it'll be the regional school business office and whoever that is that figures it out.
Susie, they rejected the proposal to have the elementary students ride with the high school students, or that's still on the table?
Oh, it's still on the table.
Okay, got it.
They had earlier rejected it when they talked about sixth graders being moved into the middle school in Amherst. And the regional school said, oh, no, we can't have those sixth graders on the bus with us. Now they're talking, and it mostly affects Shutesbury. It's not clear whether it affects Leverett, but our elementary school kids may end up riding the bus with the high school kids.
Okay. Anything else, school? Susie?
No, I think that is it.
Personnel?
Well, the only personnel items we've been working on was the one I covered already with the new policy on the
Okay.
salary increases, COLA. Excuse me.
Okay. All right. And capital planning is still, you guys
Wow.
meeting tomorrow? Yep. Jim, anything with broadband?
Nothing breathtaking, no.
Okay. We don't need anything. We don't need. Right. Anything else anybody wants to throw out there?
No.
Can we wrap up our meeting?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
Take a vote.
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
SUI.
Closure, aye.
Walton, aye.
Sayonara.
Aye, aye.
You guys all have a nice evening.
Good night.
Okay, see you soon.
See you
Take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Good night. Good night, Jim.